We gotta go to the bullpen. Welcome to the Highland Bullpen, the all-new podcast bringing America's pastime to Scotland's shores. It doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer heading for Cooperstown or you're fresh out of the minor leagues. This is the podcast for you.
Yeah, I just think they're classic. Since I was having a look, as I do with the Tigers, I like to count the number of teams who've got a lower percentage than them. and I think in our tenure of baseball fans and certainly podcasting, this might be an all-time high that there are 9 teams currently worse than the Tigers in baseball. I then picked up on a couple of stats which were quite fascinating, that the Blue Jays, I mean, that's some division the Red Sox are in. The Blue Jays are in 4th place with a run differential of plus 104.
Yeah, it's something that, I've been keeping quiet about, really. The sort of Red Sox.
Win that division, and they've got to be pretty impressive.
I know it's being recorded, and it's something I had written down about the fact that this has not been a great week for the Red Sox. They're sort of got this great record of comeback wins, haven't they? Comeback win record. It's it's up there in the top 3, which is great, and it's a good trait for any sports team. Having said that, and I've been quiet about it because I didn't want to hex them, doesn't mean they go behind a lot.
Yeah.
And, although they score a lot of runs, they do concede a lot too. And you look at they've scored, 530. They've conceded 482. Only Baltimore in our division has conceded more runs. And no other team in the top 2 of each of the 3 American divisions has conceded as many. It's a similar story if you look in the National League as well. We've conceded probably, if you looked at the whole 30 teams, you look at them, they're probably about midway in terms of conceding runs. So, the good news is they're only 1 run behind the 3 games ahead for the wild card. But it is a chastening thought that the Red Sox score a few, but they do concede quite a lot. And you want to go for the playoff season, you need to tighten up a bit. If they want to do well in the playoff season, they really need to do something a bit different.
Would it be fair to say they're almost like a Keegan's Newcastle then? Quite offensively good, but deficiencies at the back. High scoring games and just coming out on top. It's not the worst way to be, but it's not good for your heart.
No, well, you look at the football analogy, and Liverpool a few seasons ago, they gone sort of nearly 30 years without winning the championship, and then they had those 2 or 3 great seasons where they were brilliant under Brendan Rodgers and then, of course, Klopp, and they were scoring loads of goals, but they were conceding. Then they signed one player, Van Dijk, and almost immediately tightened up their defence. They kept playing well and won the league. Is it that simple in baseball? I'm not sure it is. We'll talk about the trade deadline, and the idea was, and I did see it somewhere, that no less than John Henry, the owner, this is only a rumour, I haven't really checked it, that he was demanding that the Red Sox sign Max Scherzer from, is it Washington Nationals?
I think so, yeah.
They sort of so far. I mean, they were obviously in World Series winners quite recently, weren't they? But I think they've sort of accepted this season that's going to happen for them, and they've sold quite a few players and sort of regrouping. I don't think that was going to happen. He's publicly stated that he wanted to go to a West Coast team, and the Dodgers have signed him, haven't they? I can understand what the Dodgers are doing. They're basically, it was last year they won it, and it was the first time they'd won the World Series for a long time. I think they really want to win it this year, just to say, look, anyone who wants to say that was an asterisk season with only 60 games, we win it again. Signing a real sort of ace starter could be something that might change, improve your team. But we've got Chris Sale coming back, fingers crossed. It's looking good. They're talking about, he's played a few games for the White Sox, I think, and in AAA, and they're talking about sort of mid-August coming back. If he comes back, he's like an ace signing coming back, so that could make a big difference.
Yeah. Before we maybe talk about the trade deadline a wee bit more, because I think Dave wanted to talk about that. When I mentioned the Blue Jays there, are you aware that there's a team topping their division who have a negative run differential?
I haven't seen that. I was looking at the numbers earlier today, actually. Just conscious of what we were going to talk about. I was concentrating really on the Red Sox, but I suppose it can happen. It would be unusual in football to be top of the league and have a minus goal difference.
The Mets.
Oh, you're good. Your Google is good, isn't it?
No, that's quite a strange division as well. I think there was a lot of talk at the start of the season, particularly with the Mets splashing out a little bit, and you had DeGrom there. I think the feeling was with a really established team like Atlanta, that might be a really quite interesting top two. I think it's just really, that division looks as if it's faded out, and I don't know if it's purely down to DeGrom, but Atlanta haven't been the team they have. Am I right in saying, does Acuna Jr. play for Atlanta? For the Braves?
Yeah.
The Braves.
Yeah, and I think he's been injured. I think he's going to be out for the season now, and that must be a real negative for them as well. But I think Atlanta have got a good record the last few years, or people speak quite highly of them. But it seems to be that division I don't know if it's there for the taking. I couldn't tell you the other teams' placings just now, but I'm pretty sure the Mets aren't really that far over 500.
It's one of the things that is quite hard to get your head around as a football fan, because you play everyone in your division, but of course you're not doing that in baseball. So if you, I don't know, I was going to say randomly end up in a weak division, you could have overall low percentages, but I don't know how random it is, because when you look at the Red Sox and the Yankees being together, and the Blue Jays and is it Tampa are leading the division, Dave? Yeah. I mean, they presumably are franchises have got a bit of cash about them as well, possibly.
Well, the Rays, just to interrupt there, something I was going to mention in the deadline chat was, the Rays are the club that have the successful club who have a low payroll.
Would they be a little similar to Oakland in that regard?
I'd need to check the numbers, Dave, but yeah, that sounds familiar.
I just remember from that, from the Moneyball film, I'm sure they said that for their budget, which has not really even changed much since then, they've always been sort of up against it, but performing really, really well. So this week, Alan, I think that Detroit had a bit of an interesting series of matches, one in particular. Have you got any more that you can talk about?
Yes, how long have I got to talk about this? Because it's a Statto's dream, this one here. So I might be here for a wee while chatting it through. So the Tigers managed to win another series. July ended up another successful month for the Tigers as well. Obviously not as successful as some fans may have hoped, but hey, we're winning. But we won the series with the Twins with a 17-14 win. Now, I'm fairly sure that none of us, when we talked about our favourite baseball score, had 17-14 down as that. I think it was fairly unusual. I did try to use the advantage of Mr. Google to find out how many times 17-14 had played out. I found one article or one website which took us up to 2016. And the scoreline 2014 had only been recorded 6 times by 2016. The most recent being in 2004, but 3 of those 17-14s, maybe not surprisingly, were in the 19th century. So this being the second one in the 21st century, having only had 2 in the 20th century in 1926 and 1961. So fairly crazy stuff. I won't give you a run through of the game, but I will go through pretty much every crazy statistic that came out of that because I love it. I might have mistakenly referred to it as a Lions game because obviously it's more akin to an NFL score. So being in Minnesota, people will be talking about the Lions and Vikings. One fundamental difference, I think, between the MLB version and the NFL version here is the Detroit team won. And I'm pretty sure that the Lions aren't winning often enough for us to say that anyway. But there was one fact came out of this, which I've read conflicting reports, but someone somewhere said it was the first ever MLB game where somebody gave up 7 home runs. Well, the unique thing here, I should be saying, is that whilst the Twins hit 7 home runs, how many do you think the Tigers got to make up their 17 runs? And this is the unique part. It's a big fat 0. So,
it's pretty amazing in itself, isn't it, to score 17 runs without the benefit of a home run with someone on base. Like.
I don't mean to steal your thunder, Alan, but in case that it leads on, but how were the team for hits and walks? Because it must insinuate there was a really good offensive batting day for the team.
Yeah, 16 hits. The Twins had 15. 9 walks, so quite a lot of walks being delivered there. 9 singles, 6 doubles, and 1 triple. I think the bizarrest thing about scoring 17 runs is they scored them in 4 innings. So they scored 2 in the second, 8 in the fourth, 3 in the sixth, and 4 in the ninth. After scoring their 8 in the 4th innings, they were 10-0 up. So, yeah, your Twins fans are switching the TV off at that stage. But the 4 runs the Tigers scored in the 19th, as you will have worked out, were obviously pivotal in making sure they actually won the game. Tigers failed to score in 5 innings, but between the 2 teams in this 31-run game, there were actually 4 scoreless innings between the 2 of them. So 4 innings will 0-0. So absolutely crazy stuff going on elsewhere. Dave?
There seems to be something I've noticed in baseball. Teams do hit back quite quickly. Because even if you go a few innings and say you get to the 3rd or 4th and it's 0-0, someone, even if it's 1 run, or if it's, in your case, Alan, 8, the opposition seems to almost get some sort of boost or bite from that and just feel, right, let's close the gap. It seems to come about quite often.
It's interesting your perspective on that, because I often wondered if it's sort of the opposite. Have the leading team become too lax or too aggressive in their pitching, which is causing them to give up runs? Something happens. I think it's a good point. Something happens
Yeah, I don't want to be rude like Albert, you're talking about, but they they ended up sort of needing them 17 runs, didn't they?
Well, exactly. They did.
Insurance runs galore.
Yeah.
That's me insurance.
Classics have great bit of insurance going on. I like the fact as well. Every Tiger got a hit. Every Tiger got an RBI, and every Tiger scored.
Wow,
so that's neat.
Yeah, the Twins certainly didn't manage that. Eric Haas got 3 runs, but that's like, yeah, you're not going to get 10-0 or 11-0 in a football game. But if you did, the striker has scored 4. Or your penalty taker has scored 2 or 3, hasn't he? So to get everybody scoring is absolutely fantastic. So how would you fancy being at that game? Would it just be absolutely crazy and you're loving every minute of it? Or would you be thinking, what on earth's going on here?
We saw something akin to that, didn't we, at the MLB 2019 when, over 2 games, it was didn't you see 50 runs scored?
Yep.
And you do get these sort of high scoring games, and it was fun. It's part of the game, isn't it? A lot of people discussed it before, haven't we? I mean, you alluded to it by saying, your favourite score is never going to be 17-14, but it's part of the game. If traditionally the purists like pitching duel, so that it's a low scoring 3-2, 2-1 game, but that wasn't plenty of. Must have been quite a lot of manufactured runs, lots of hits, lots of given that Detroit didn't get a home run, so
good play.
It's been quite very different.
So last point, and I've given enough stats on the game. I'm sure somebody's gone into it in even more depth, but I'm sure I've come across a Twitter site called, I think maybe Scorigami, which is, it's NFL, but what they do is they tweet about unique scores. And I think every year or two, a unique score does still crop up in NFL, which is interesting because you might get 48-23, but baseball must have plenty of stuff. So I was quite excited to see 6 previous 17-14s, but I'd have probably liked to see just one. The world of the White Sox in Chicago, did the week go 7 games, 17 runs for the White Sox and conceding 14 over 7 games, or?
Not far off, Alan. Not far off at all. I get since the All-Star break, the White Sox have kind of spluttered a little bit. We've not been as free-flowing as we were beforehand. Again, some more injuries, but some players returning, which has been fantastic. The 7 games this week, disappointingly, we lost a 4-game series, 3-1 to Kansas City. And we all know the importance of winning those games in your own division. The irony is, apparently some of those games were putting out sides to save ourselves to play the Cleveland Indians, who are second. The feeling being that if we could beat the Indians or whitewash them over 3 games, then it would really just knock them out the race completely. But given how they traded over the trading deadline, which is something we'll speak about later, they've almost gave up on the chase themselves. Although it doesn't look like the players have given up by any means, they still looked a really strong outfit over the 3 games I caught. So we managed to beat the Indians 2-1. And again, some fantastic games in there. One of them was a 13-12, so not quite to your own standards, but really interesting to watch all the way through. A little bit more on that later. Interesting to note that the Indians decided this week their name from 2022 going forward will be the Cleveland Guardians. And when I had a look into why that is, going over one of the bridges in Cleveland, there's 2 absolutely massive statues might not be the right word, but kind of carvings on the bridges, kind of guardians to protect the citizens and the traffic in amongst Cleveland. So these, that was one of the names put forward, and that's how they will be known as going forward, which is really quite interesting. Alan, sorry.
That was quite good, actually, Dave. You know, it's totally different and interesting, but when you know the background to it, I don't know what the alternatives were, but seems like a good one to me.
Cleveland Cowboys.
I just like the fact that Guardians, I mean, there's insurance companies called Guardians, so that when they get their insurance runs knocked in as well, there's even more connection there as well. What do you want?
So over the next week, we've got another 3 games home to Kansas, 3 away at the Cubs, again, more on them later, and then 3 at the Twins, so some back to the American League Central. In terms of, so I'll leave out the trades just now, but what a week for the White Sox. Although we came out in the losing end of the 7 games just, some crazy incidents. If anyone out there can catch Yoan Moncada's home run, 2 outfielders running towards each other, colliding, and the ball, which was falling 2-3 feet short of the kind of home run line, it's managed to hit one of them in the glove and go over, where the other 2 guys end up in their butts. Always kind of funny to watch. Jose Abreu, who is now officially the most hit by batter in the MLB, was hit by the Indians Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. And again, the third one of those was pretty horrific. He seems to take some real headshots, for those not familiar with the game, up and in tends to be the kind of classification for that. And what I found really interesting is that one of his friends in the Indians team, a really good third baseman, Ramirez, having a great season himself, he was actually furious with his own team and his own pitching team. It showed him afterwards. Apparently he just wasn't. It's someone of a similar build. It's someone of a similar hitting nature. He felt that his own pitching team had been out of order in doing so. And it's strange to watch because the pitchers genuinely look so upset with themselves that they've caused some contact or potential injury. But it's very unusual that the same guy is hit time in, time out. And whether that's to do with the type of pitch being up and in, and it leads to more dangerous situations, I don't know. But that was 3 nights running. You know, one of the nights the bench is emptied. It was all kind of kicking off. The 13-12 game that I mentioned earlier, absolutely wonderful scenes, although it was a loss for the White Sox. Our catcher, so bear in mind he was our 3rd choice, maybe even 4th choice catcher at the start of the season, Seby Zavala. So he's come in with Yasmani Grandal being out recently. And it's his first real season in the majors. I haven't checked out if he's kind of played the odd appearance over the last few years. But for a guy he's played a substantial amount of games this year. And he's had 1 RBI up until Saturday night and went on to hit 4 for 4 on the evening. However, of those 4 hits, 3 were home runs. And it was absolutely, the second of which was a grand slam. And seeing his eyes, seeing his reaction to doing this was incredible. As he said afterwards, the only thing that could be better if the White Sox had won the game. But again, Alan loves his stats. So that particular feat is the first time ever in baseball, not since a particular year, but the first time ever that someone's first 3 home runs have came in the same game. Which leads me to think that it's an incredible feat. That's just never happened in baseball before. And last night, to kind of top things off, 2 nights ago, Brian Goodwin hit his first ever walk-off. And in a stark contrast to 20 hours before, 13-12 game, this one finished 2-1 in the 9th. And again, it's just, it must really depend just how the pitches are that night, the weather. You get the same stadium, the same, generally the same players, the same outfits across both But the pitching and the weather and the circumstances just lead to a completely different game.
Yeah. Once again, the MLB provides us with two things in a week, which is the first time something has happened in the 140, 150-year history of Major League Baseball. Brilliant stuff.
So thanks, Alan. It wasn't myself that hit the home runs, but I'll pass your love on to Sebi.
We know you could have done it.
So to go on from there, the White Sox, for those of you that don't know, this week's been really quite big in the MLB, and you've had a trading deadline. I'm not sure how these things have operated in the past. I know that last season there wasn't really one mid-season, but this year is the only one during the season, which leads me to think over past years you may have 2 windows, if we're bringing that back to football in this country. So the White Sox in particular managed to pick up a second baseman from the Indians, which was a huge move because it effectively it was the Indians, please excuse the pun, waving the white flag and sort of saying, okay, we're building for the next few seasons, but by getting in other players. But also, more bizarrely, the White Sox done a few trades with the Chicago Cubs, which meant that my wee pal, Nick Madrigal, who was really going to be fundamental to the next few years, he's moved across the city. He is injured for 2022, until 2022, but we've brought in a couple of real pitching options. One being a guy to pitch, as expected, maybe a 6th and 7th inning, a decent arm is the feeling. But the big move, and I think it sent a little bit of shockwaves to perhaps more learned fans in the MLB, a lad by the name of Kimbrel, who, if we think that Liam Hendricks is a great closer, a great saver of games, he has all the stats to back it up year in, year out. And apparently is a future Hall of Famer, a real cubby. He's one of the guys that brought the World Series home to the Cubs a few years ago. And, perhaps leading on to you guys, it'd be interesting to see how you felt the transfer window, the trade deadline went. But the Cubs seem to have made huge moves in terms of offloading a lot of their big stars that were involved in that World Series win. And they've made a big play to build for the next few years. So I think I was explaining to my son, but it seems to be so interesting the way that moves are made, and it's trades and swaps rather than £100 million transfer fees. But you can really see teams saying, okay, this season's out, perhaps even next season, we're going to put all of our stock in these young potential stars of the future.
Looking at the Red Sox activity just before I go into that, it just occurred to me there was a couple of interesting things to come out of this relatively poor week for the Red Sox. I think I mentioned before the young lad. Well, he's 24, but he's a young lad, Jaron Duran, who only had a brother. They could play him in the same team, and be Duran, wouldn't it? So yeah, he had this speed dimension, running game, which the Red Sox don't have a great deal of. And I was watching the game live and on Nesson, my favourite, Dave O'Brien, the commentator, and he was getting really excited because he hit what looked like pretty much my favourite thing in baseball, an inside the park home run. So you get a home run, but you haven't hit it out of the park. You've hit it into a deep area of the field, and in Fenway, that was, I think it was a so-called triangle. So in centre field, there's this odd configuration in Fenway where the ball can bounce around a bit, and he just took off. And you thought, this is going to be a triple, but of course the cameras are concentrating on the fielder getting the ball, and he did sort of reach around for it a bit, sort of like panicking, didn't pick it up straight away. But the commentator was saying, was getting so excited, and he made it home. And it wasn't until later that the official scorer actually scored it as a triple. and an error for the centre fielder, so it'd be an E8 because he hadn't picked the ball up cleanly when it bounced back off this part of the outfield. So it was a bit of a shame, really. It didn't, because it's quite a rare thing.
So does that not officially count as a home? That goes down in his statistics as a triple.
Yeah, he will get a triple. He will get a run, against his name, but he doesn't get the home run. If that had been an inside the park home run, then it would count towards his home run. He has got one home run already.
Yeah,
but it was a shame. But obviously it's the New England Sports Network, and it was I can't remember whether it was. I think it might have been Jerry Reamy. Great, it's got a great commentary team. Dave O'Brien is the commentator. Jerry Reamy, Red Sox through and through, and quite often Dennis Eckersley is in there. You've got to listen to him. He's got some great saves. But Jerry Reamy, he was quite adamant that he said the scorers pretty much got that right. Whereas O'Brien's, he was saying that and this happens a lot when you've got a guy who's known as a fast runner, then it affects how a fielder goes to get the ball because they rush it. They know they've got to hurry the play. And he said perhaps that's why he didn't pick it up so cleanly. But anyway, that's what happened. The other thing that happened was at Tropicana Park. I don't know if you're familiar with that, the Tampa Bay Rays. But it's a dome, isn't it?
More 80s pop music references there with Club Tropicana.
Club Tropicana, I'm sure they must have an area that's Club Tropicana, and it's a dome. It's an inside ballpark anyway. It looks, if you look up at it, in the TV cameras, it looks like the inside of a circus tent. They've got this, what they call a catwalk, a high catwalk, and then they've got the lower catwalk. And one of the Red Sox batters popped the ball up into foul territory behind him, and it was going to be a routine play for the catcher. He thought, I got it. And then it became pretty clear that the ball wasn't coming down. It popped up, but it wasn't coming down. And it stayed up on the catwalk. And again, one of the guys said, this happened last time we were here. So it's, quite often they do hit them. In one of the other games in that series, I think one of the Red Sox players hit the ball. For a moment, it looked like it was going to go for a home run, but it just went foul of the left field foul pole. But that hit the bottom tier of this catwalk as well. So, I think they're talking about. Is it them that are talking about getting not just a new stadium, but 2 new stadiums, and they're going to share with Montreal? Did I hear that correctly? We'll need to look into that. I think Montreal being desperate for a team, but it's quite possible that they could play. It gets very hot in Tampa. I think that's the talk, that maybe they'll get a new ballpark in Tampa, an outside ballpark, and play their early games there, and then the summer games will play up in Montreal. See if that happens. In terms of Red Sox and the deadline activity, well, Shane Bloom, I don't know if you know the name, but he's the chief baseball officer at Boston, and they poached him from Tampa Bay Rays before the start of last season. So as I was saying earlier, everyone admires what the Rays do consistently on their low payroll. It's currently 70 million, something like that, and that is 26th out of 30.
Wow.
And given that they're top of the division again, they made the World Series last year, consistently high. You look at the Red Sox, they want to reduce their payroll. And, I think a couple of years ago they might have been top. They're now sixth highest at 182 million. You compare that with the Dodgers, 265 million, and the Yankees, 203 million. So the Rays are achieving what they're achieving on a third of the top guys.
Oh, it's really interesting, Dave, when you're talking about budgets there. And I know you've done a good bit of work into that before, but from that transfer window, it just showed the strength of your division. It felt like 4 teams are still hell-bent on finishing not just the playoffs, but first place. And I know it's really tight with you guys in Tampa, but Toronto, we've all spoken a lot. I think we're all quite fond of Toronto for various reasons. But they've really invested in that team again. And the Yankees, well, I'm sure that the owner is just always going to push the Yankees on, regardless of where they sit. But that's, nobody is flying the white flag at all in your division. That's going to be right there till September.
Yeah, definitely. And, the Yankees don't mess about, do they? More of that later. I think I mentioned about, the rumor was that the owner wanted Max Scherzer. That didn't happen. But I do like this. It's not a direct quote, but I'm paraphrasing Bloom. And he said, about the trade deadline, he says it comes down to what you have, what you want, and what you're willing to give up. And he said it's not necessarily about adding to the payroll or not. So I think he was getting his defense in early because, the Red Sox fans wanted a big signing. They wanted, a couple of areas where they're particularly reasonably well assumed that that's where the Red Sox would go. The thing about that quote is that the Red Sox don't want to give up their prospects. And I'll just go through who they got. They got a couple of. They didn't go for the big name starter because I think fingers crossed again. Chris Sale is coming back. He's going to be the ace. They've also got Tanner Houck, who they're going to recall again. Got great hopes for him as being a real top class starter. He'll be in the rotation again. They picked up a couple of relief pitchers. And they traded. They got a lefty from Pittsburgh, Austin Davis, and they traded. I'm really sorry about this, Michael Chavis, who I really liked, and we saw at MLB London. He, along with everyone else, he got a couple of home runs, but he was a rookie there. And I thought, have we seen a future superstar for Boston? But anyway, he's away. The big trade that they made was the signing of Kyle Schwarber, and I think he's another Washington Nationals guy, and he's an established lefty slugger. I think it was well mooted that they wanted a left-handed hitter. The talk was, and I've listened to Tony Maz on his podcast, that they wanted a first baseman, and the guy that they were plugging was Anthony Rizzo of the Cubs, another one of that 2016 team.
Yeah.
Dave, he fitted the bill, but the Yankees got him after signing another lefty, Joey Gallo. So 2 big sluggers. Remember, Yankee Stadium, again, this has been well documented that they didn't have a lot of lefties in their lineup, and it's a ballpark which is designed for left-handed hitters, as we've mentioned before, the house that Ruth built, Mark III. Yeah, so Alex Cora is quite the same. He's happy. We got better, an impact bat who is versatile and makes us a more complete team. He's an outfielder, though, but the talk is that they might try and play him at first base, possibly platoon him with right-hander Bobby Dolbeck or replace him. But the thing is, we'll have to wait a while because he's injured. So he's on the IL-10, and he's expected back in the second week of August. But put it this way, he's been out for for a few weeks. Before the All-Star break, he went on this really hot streak, and he already had 25. He's already got 25 home runs to his name. So if you can pick up where he went on before that, then it could be a good one for the Red Sox.
Just to pick you up on a phrase there, Dave, I've heard it used before by some MLB commentators, and you've used it there as well. When you say platooning, what does that mean exactly in terms of baseball?
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. What sometimes happens is because in baseball, the big thing is matchups, right-handed and left-handed matchups. So I think we talked about this, but I think I'm the only one who uses this. But the BOPS principle is how I remember it. Batters opposite, pitchers same. So if you're a batsman, you prefer to play against, if you're a right-handed batsman, you prefer to play against a left-handed pitcher. If you're a pitcher, the numbers say that it's better for the pitcher if he a lefty against lefty, right against righty. So what they sometimes do is, switch hitters are big in baseball as well. If you've got a switch hitter who can bat right and left, then that's a big plus for the team. But in some positions, what they'll do is they'll have a right-handed first baseman like Bobby Dahlbeck, and then they'll have a left-handed first baseman who can play in his stead. So the righty will play when there's a left-handed pitcher starting for the opposition, and vice versa, because the numbers say that it's better that way. I think we might have talked about this before, and I think it's something to. There are a couple of things like the pitcher. If you're a right-handed batsman and it's a right-handed pitcher, you see the ball slightly later than you would just because of how they line up, and also I think the natural ball for a right-handed pitcher, it's more natural for him to throw the ball away from the right-handed batter than it is for a lefty. So the numbers back it up, and in baseball, what they call it, the telemetrics, that counts for a lot. So that's what platooning is. Then you'll have that in the outfield as well. Quite a lot of players you'll see changes, and why they put him in for this game. It's quite likely because he's right-handed and the starting pitcher's left-handed, or the other way around.
Just pick up very quickly on trading from a Tigers perspective, although I'll maybe give a more general overview on this. The Tigers weren't involved much on deadline day in trading. Daniel Norris, a pitcher who's been around for a few years, was traded away, and the Tigers took in a prospect. A number of Tigers players were considered on the radars of a few teams. We've got Gregory Soto, who's become a star in our fantasy team, is picking up a few saves and holds. He was considered a valuable commodity. And then the likes of Shoop and Candelario were considered potentials for people to pick up. But nobody did, although the article I did read about it suggested a few people were asking. My general observation on the trading day is quite different to the football world, but because in baseball, it's all about winning or getting a wild card spot. Finishing last, in a way, it doesn't really matter. So what you tend not to see is the poorer teams actively trading for better players. You might be used to sort of your football team at the bottom of the league. You need a new centre back and a new striker. You're likely to be one of the more active teams trading in the transfer window, but not in baseball. You obviously then leave it till the off season. You've got a bunch of prospects around the the minor league system, and that's where you look. But you might trade away some of your star players bizarrely because you're not that bothered if you're fourth and you go to fifth, and if you can get some good prospects for the future for your star man, you're going to do that because your star man has two things. He's obviously not delivering a winning formula to your franchise, but more importantly, for the teams going to the playoffs and they're looking for a top slugger or they're looking for that last starter to finish their pitching rotation. That's what's going to happen. So another quiet one for the Tigers. But yeah, it's I just like the differences that they've.
Staying static isn't so bad this year, Alan. I know you're a little bit behind in terms of a playoff spot, but for our division, the Indians have pretty much signalled that they feel their season's over. Kansas have traded away a lot of guys, and the Twins have traded away Nelson Cruz. I've mentioned to you, no offence to Dave, nothing to do with the next couple of games coming up, but I've said to Alan, I really feel that Detroit could be in a good position coming up towards the end of August. The Indians have got some really tough games coming up. Yeah, the second might not get you a playoff spot, but I think it could be quite interesting to take you into next season.
Fantastic if we get to second place. So we have the Indians this week. The series against the Indians comes after one of our Highland Bullpen matchups where the Tigers and the Red Sox do battle. So, Yorkshire Dave, what's going to happen there?
Yesterday was a rest day for the Red Sox, which probably came at a good time because they've got 5 out of the last 6. So, chance to regroup a bit, and they've had a few not massively serious injuries, but niggling injuries. So I think the two sort of key men, the all-star infield duo of Sander Bogarts and Rafi Devers at shortstop and base have had missed a few games. So hopefully they'll be back and swinging their bats. And very much like to see, let's not say a sweep, but a 2-1. I think they've lost the last 3 series. Red Sox.
Much as I'd love to see the Tigers continue their winning ways, I will also admit some bullpen loyalties and recognise that if it helps the Red Sox get to the playoffs, I might not be too disappointed if it is a 2-1 win for the Red Sox. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's Hinch and Alex Cora.
Yes, of course.
Matchup. They were obviously both together at Houston. They're probably 2 of the best young managers around today, aren't they? So it'll be very interesting. I think the third game in the series we'll have to link up on WhatsApp or Zoom or something.
It's a UK friendly time. It's 6:10 p.m. first pitch. I think they just randomly do. I've never studied it closely. They do seem to have certainly Sundays, but you can understand Sundays as a regular 6:10, and then there's the occasional other one thrown in. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. And the White Sox are going to go on they're going to capitalise in the Central Division here.
Hopefully.
Enough said.
It's interesting with those games coming up. The feeling seems to be that the White Sox should win our division, and that these moves that they've made is to help bolster the bullpen for October. So if you can put yourself that you're there already, the feeling is that if you're giving yourself, I think we've perhaps got some of the best starting rotation in the American League, and the feeling is we might just have added the best bullpen in the American League. If you can get those guys back who've been injured, Jose Abreu hasn't been firing on all cylinders. TA has had a good season, to be fair. We haven't had a second baseman all season. We've been missing Eloy and Luis Robert. We haven't been heavy scorers. Our pitching has been outstanding. So the feeling is that if you can keep that strong and you can get these guys back over the next couple of months, it puts you in a lot better position for October. it's exciting to look forward to, but at the same point, you get worried when you think there's still 2 months to go, and people are saying, "Oh, the league's over." But we've not been too great recently, so I think it's still important to keep things ticking along.
But to put the wins on the board,
yes.
And talking of putting the wins on the board, we had a tied match in the UK Baseball Podcasters Fantasy League this week with our friends at Angels Over the Pond. I know we have a laugh at the Angels occasionally, but the guy Matt, who runs the Angels Over the Pond, does a fantastic amount of work and research and promoting baseball as a sport for UK fans and reaching out to Angels fans across the world. So please give Angels Over the Pond a like and a follow and go for that. We had a 4-4 matchup, so 5 points each with 2 halved points there. We close. There's something like, I think 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th are all within a couple of points in competing for that last playoff place as the things heat up there. I do have a slight confession to make. I don't think it's probably a moot point, but whilst I kicked Kendall Graveman out of the team immediately as an active relief pitcher for being traded away from the Mariners, I've left Nick Madrigal on our injured list, which is probably an irrelevance because my thinking was, well, I'll leave him there until I'm forced to get rid of him so no one else can pick him up. But of course, he's not going to play this season anyway, so it's probably a bit of a moot point. So anyone looking in, objecting to the fact that we've got a Chicago Cubs player in our lineup, okay, that's indication from Dave Jr. there on Zoom that I should just bin him now. So I will attend to that shortly. And
No,
anyway,
I was just going to give a small update on the Olympics. So congratulations in the softball. Again, to remind everyone, that's the women's outlet for medals this year. Japan beat the States in the final there, 2-0. And moving on to the baseball, which started this week. So again, I was having a look over the kind of history. Cuba have won gold 3 times, and the US and South Korea have split the honours the other 2 times. So it's quite interesting. So far, again, I'm not keeping fully up to date with it, but from what I can see, Japan and South Korea will meet in one semi-final, and it looks as if the other semi-final will be decided tomorrow morning. But I thought I'll have a wee look to see which Olympians we've had for our 4 teams. And it's quite interesting. So you've got, for the Tigers, AJ Hinch actually took part in the 1996 Olympics.
okay, in Atlanta.
So again, you'll see a lot of these numbers might be young men breaking through into the game or at the end of their careers. He was the Tigers' most prominent
Olympian
affiliation. For the White Sox, you guys might be familiar with the name Jose Contreras.
Yes.
So he was a big player for the White Sox over the 90s. He won a gold in 96 and a silver in 2000 with Cuba. The Red Sox, so a name I wasn't too familiar with, Dave, a catcher, is it Jason Varitek?
Oh, yeah.
So he was from what I can see, he was with the Red Sox for 14 years, and I thought, right, well, that's not a journeyman, that's a one-club man.
Yeah, I would say he's one of the great catchers in recent years. Wasn't he part of the team that finally won the World Series? I'd have to double check.
Okay. So he took part in Barcelona, and for Richard's Mariners, a little bit tenuous, but one of the Mariners managers in the 90s, Jim Lefebvre. So he managed the Mariners in the 1990s for a couple of years, but he also managed China in the 2008 Olympics and led them to a fantastic 1-for-6 during the tournament. So he perhaps didn't have the best outing there. But no, so our teams have all got that little bit of Olympic prestige against their names.
Yeah, fantastic bit of research there. Well done on finding all that out. And I liked that Jim Lefebvre because that reminded us of our favourite international football manager, the Little General, Mr. Advocat, who is away to Iraq to lead them to glory in the 2022 World Cup. And one of you pointed out, how many international teams has he managed now?
I think that's 7, isn't it? You know, I don't know whether I could name. Well, he's certainly done the Netherlands 3 times, haven't they? Serbia, Russia.
Did he do something like Kuwait as well at one point, possibly?
Yeah, he's UAE.
He's UAE, yeah.
Certainly. So he's been in that neck of the woods before. I wonder if he's done all the continents.
And having retired last season from football management at the age of 72 or 73, I'm intrigued to know whether it's Mrs. Advocat telling him to get out there because I can't have you in the house. That's much more likely than Mrs. Advocat not being worth going home to.
Young fella, you know, certainly looks like, you know, he's no grey hairs, is he?
I think they may be sponsored.
Do you think he's just wearing a line up and down the living room just as he walks and patrols and watches the TV?
Yeah, in that Crombie overcoat he's always
glancing at the big gold watch.
We love him, and that's one of our greatest ever moments, isn't it, when we got a thumbs up from the little general at was it Sparta?
Utrecht, I think, was it?
Utrecht, of course. Yeah.
His picture was on the. I'm actually going to say on the ceiling when we went to Sparta. Was it on the? Did we have to look up and there pictures on the ceiling
in the sports shop? Yeah, when we were.
That's great. Always good to catch up, gents. Unfortunately, Richard is away working at the Olympics. Well, he's away in the West End of Glasgow working on the Olympics, I believe, for a Dutch broadcaster. So we hope you've not missed him too much. And the chat from the 2 Daves and myself has been enjoyable for you. And we'll catch up all with you soon, folks. So thanks very much.